Katie Taylor there after being crowned a 2-weight world champion on Saturday evening at the Manchester Arena, following the footsteps of Steve Collins and Carl Frampton. Such is the rarity of that achievement on this island. Two men who were in attendance for that fight, and a really good card as well on Saturday night in Manchester. Randy Lee and our own Ronan Mullen. Thank you both for coming back into the studio.
Yeah, good to be back, Andy.
The one thing that we do with Katie, I think more than any other Irish fighter, and I'd even include yourself in that, is because we've been watching her pretty much since she was a kid, is that we watch each fight in terms of the one that went previously to it. And we watch how maybe she's picked up and learned from what went before. The Pursoon fight was obviously the toughest test that she's had so far, in terms of how close that fight went, to going against Katie. How much did you see of her learnings, for want of a better term, on Saturday night?
In that regards, it was a huge difference and a huge improvement from Katie. I don't know if you agree, Ronan, but she could have made this as hard as the Pursoon fight if she stood and fought, but she boxed smart, boxed tactically, and she dominated Linardatou. There were a couple of sketchy moments, but that was always going to be the case, going up in weight, fighting a champion who's only lost to Pursoon and beaten good opponents since then. And very dangerous Linardatou was, especially with the right hand. But Katie made adjustments as the fight went on, and got hit with lesser punches as it went on as well. So yeah, it was a masterclass in a lot of ways.
The one thing I did actually after watching Katie and Linardatou on Saturday, I watched that back again today. I then watched Linardatou and Pursoon's fight from 3 years ago back again. It seems as if Pursoon is one of those people who, regardless of who she's fighting, will drag them into a bit of a war, and Katie just got sucked into that a little bit. There was a sense that she'd 100% learned from that, and that her footwork and her ring management on Saturday were just A1.
Yeah, and I think you got to take into consideration the human aspect of it. Against Pursoon, it was a man square garden, it was a huge card, it was the undisputed title, and then on Saturday she was headlining a show. A female boxer headlining a show in England on a big card on Sky Sports, and you have to. There's also this. I think Katie has a feeling that she needs to entertain and show that women's boxing is also equal to men, and that it's not just. Then technically not as good, or they don't have the same heart. So Katie kind of steps up and makes it a fight a lot of times. And I would say those two factors fed into her performances. But this time she controlled it a lot better. She controlled her emotions a lot better and stayed calm, stayed cool and boxed. And it was as good as I've seen Katie box in terms of the calibre of the opponent and how she manipulated her around the ring and led the dance, really.
Yeah, and that human element that was born out after the fight, you see the emotion. It was on par with London 2012 almost, because the Madison Square Garden fight against Pursoon, that should have been a crowning moment, an unparalleled achievement by an Irish sports person to be an undisputed champion. But she was slightly robbed of that because there was so much contention around the decision. And in retrospect, that was unfair, because I felt she edged that fight, and I think on reflection a lot of people do. But this one she won conclusively, although it was a hard-fought contest. She was the clear winner. Maybe Linardatou doesn't agree, but everyone else ringside was of that opinion. And as I said, it was borne out. She looked relieved and thrilled as well to make history in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic achievement. We mentioned Linardatou's unhappiness afterwards. He's watching the press conference. It was one of those things where she seems utterly 100% believing in what she's saying, but what she's saying doesn't happen to be true.
No, and I think she probably had it in her mind going into the fight, because her attitude was bad in the fight itself. I'm not sure if you noticed that, Ronan.
She got frustrated and
she was complaining, constantly complaining, looking for any little thing to whine about to the referee if they were in a clinch, or if they were, if the heads came close together, which she was guilty of a lot of the times. And that big swelling on Katie's eye came from a clash of heads. It was really clash of heads in the second round. So as well, Katie had to fight, especially the last half of the fight, when that swelling started to increase, basically with one eye, So it makes it even more remarkable.
How difficult is that when that happened? Because it properly started to show, I think, between rounds 2 and 3. Round 3 is when you're first noticing, oh Christ, she has a bit of a nick here, and it's actually getting bigger and bigger. How difficult is it to fight through one of those?
You can imagine the pain you feel every time you're getting hit. The adrenaline's going, so you don't notice it. But then when you get back to the corner, they're putting the inswell like a frozen kind of piece of metal steel on it to reduce the swelling, and then your vision is impaired, and it was increasingly impaired as the fight went on. So you have to that's also another feather and another experience for Katie in her boxing ring, that she's she says she's dealt with and came through.
Yeah, you made an interesting point because this was her first fight at 140 pounds, and speaking on the podcast last week, Andy was saying sometimes fighters are reluctant to move up or try and boil themselves down because they don't trust their technique, whereas Katie's the opposite. She was happy enough. She walks around, she says herself, at around 140, and it would be uncommon to fight at your walking around weight, but she went in there. It was more technique that allowed her to hold her own rather than Linardatou, who, while having also come up from lower weights, like she wore the 140 pounds very well.
She was noticeably bigger. Maybe not in height, but in her physique. She was a stronger woman. Like, and it was a craft. It was her craft. You know, she's like what she does when she's circling the ring and making opponents miss and countering them. She's one of the best in the world. Like in terms of regardless of gender.
And she was making Linardatou miss a lot on Saturday. Like it was noticeable that Linardatou was clearly wanting to throw a couple of bombs, but Katie was savvy enough to stay out of the way of the vast majority of them.
And the bravado that, like Andy was alluding to there, where Katie, when she gets hit, she wants to give two back, and she likes to stand and trade. Like much is made of her meek persona outside the ring. She's such a nice person to deal with, but in the ring she's ferocious and she wants to stand there and trade. And she actually mentioned it in the press conference that she had to work hard to be disciplined because it's actually easier to stand there and fight than move your legs. And Andy can probably speak to that. That I think Tommy Coyle made a similar point that it hurts his brain when he has to think and try and stay to tactics. It's actually easier to plant your feet and swing. So like it was a good tactical game.
Noticed, like I was listening to Steve Bunce today, and he like hit the nail on the head. When she was announced the winner and she was doing her interview, the reception she got, it was a special moment. It was like a new era in female boxing.
I was listening to the crowd. The one thing you can kind of notice about the different compositions of crowds and who's popular where and in front of what crowd, etc., there was a noticeably higher pitch to the cheering. and I mean that with all due respect. There was a lot more women seemingly in the arena that night. And younger people as well.
Yeah, younger girls with signs and banners and flags. And
it was fantastic, yeah.
Like, it's just, like, I don't know. It is a real shift, like, for an Irish, even just regardless, an Irish fighter fighting in England, to get that reception, it was better than the main event, you know, the Crawler got, and that was supposed to
be... Which is saying something.
Yeah, he's a Manchester fighter in Manchester, and it was his going away party. But there was just as many people there to see Katie, and I even think the people who were there to see Crawler appreciated what she did in the ring, and everyone was on their feet.
There seems to be that more and more about the cards that she's on, and that... You think of the couple of ones that she was thrown into, say in Cardiff or where she's in the middle of the card, people are still filtering in. There's a lot of that. There's a definite sense that people are there to see her now.
Oh no, she's in the traction now. She's a draw, and it's only going to increase. Like she's gotten to the point now where every fight is going to be against another champion or somebody who's a major rival or a major threat. So every fight's going to be a headline card now. You know. There's talk of having a pay-per-view headline fight next year, and that will be a real statement. Yeah,
because we speak over here all the time about like it's borne out in the make of the Irish women's boxing team now. It's so strong, and that depth has been elicited by Katie Taylor. People look up to her, and she spawned this new generation. But similarly in England, there was a fighter on the undercard, Terry Harper, who was a good amateur, but just packed boxing in because she couldn't see any potential route to make money out of it. Saw Katie Taylor making waves in the pro game, was like, I can get back involved here. And she was going to buy a ticket for this fight the other day, but then Eddie Hearn gave her a call and said, you're actually on the card. So she's fighting for a world title now herself. So it just shows that women's boxing beyond Katie Taylor is improving, and it's very much down to her as well.
You mentioned there she would walk around naturally in around 140 anyway. Like, is that going to be a difficult thing going on to vacillate between weight divisions?
I'm not sure how far she can go up. Like there's this fight with Selena Brackhouse being touted. What weight would you see that fight being, Ronan?
Well, 147, I wouldn't. I think 135 was actually the max for Katie, and 140's pushing it a little bit. I do think so. Maybe 142, but whether Brackhouse, who's a little bit older, can make that drop down, I'm not quite sure.
They must feel that they can, because it's not just being rumoured, it's being spoke about, in a meaningful way, that fight.
That would be two undisputed champions meeting each other. That's the first time that would ever have happened. So,
well, you look at like the potential opponents. It's post Serrano, who's a big rival, who's a multi-weight world champion. There's Brackhouse, and there's the Pursoon rematch, which will be huge. That rematch will be huge, and you have to tip your hat to Brian Peters and Katie in the decision making, because everyone was shouting out for an immediate rematch. But now that Katie's come and had this fight in England, headlined it. She's added to her value and shown that she's a draw by her own self. So when they come to negotiate that rematch, they'll be in a lot stronger position and the interest will be a lot higher.
How far down the road is that going to be? Because she's, 33 now, is Katie. Don't want to be in a situation where she's 35, 36 and she's come back
the summer of next year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Andy alluded to it there. March, International Women's Day, DAZN, who have they're the big streaming platform that have made waves this year. They're looking to put on an all-female show, as you said. So that's looking at March 7th, I think. And then she fights 3 times a year is the average for Katie. So you're talking March, maybe another one in the summertime, and then another one this time next year. And they're all going to be super fights. She's gone past the stage of maybe mandatory challengers. It's gotten to the point where she can't keep a hold of all these belts. You know, boxing politics is going to get in the way. She's going to be presented with fights that aren't quite as lucrative or appealing. She's going to have to start turning them down and go for the big ones, because she is 33 and she's still somewhat in her prime and she needs to bank while she can. Yeah,
Matthew Macklin and Adam Smith mentioned it a few times in comments on Saturday. The age thing came up. At what stage does that start entering her head, or is it something that she wouldn't be cognizant of at all?
Speaking to her, she has no intention of slowing down or stopping at all. You know, she's hungry and she's driven as ever, as much as ever. Like, so, like, from a personal point, you'd say, like, win these next 3 fights and then sail off in the sunset as the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
If she's not already. But she herself, it seems like there's no intention of winding down anytime soon.
It's a case of management and kind of managing her fights and picking and choosing the dates then, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think, but there's only a certain amount of managing you can do at this stage, because everyone she's going to be fighting now is going to be the best in their division, you know. So there's not really, you can't really pick and choose.
Yeah, and Brian Peters and Eddie Hearn actually deserve a lot of credit, because I remember it was off the back of a little bit of a lull post Rio 2016, which was a bad year for Irish boxing as a whole. And Katie turned pro, and we weren't quite sure how it was going to go because there was no real landscape to base it off. But she's just, in the last 3 years, it's incredible. Like, her Irish stardom has segued into international stardom, and the only way is up, it would appear.
We have to touch on this because it comes up every time she fights, and a lot of people obviously would like to see it. I know there are a lot of travelling support over Manchester. There's people on the East Coast, especially of America, who get along to see her because it's massive Irish populations, and the likes of Philadelphia, the likes of Boston, the likes of New York. The fact that she can't fight here, and it is a case of not that she doesn't want to, like, it seems that she can't, is a huge, huge shame. Is there ever going to be any getting around that?
I don't know. I honestly don't have the answers. I'm not sure what you think, Ronan, but it's going to take a long time, I think. But you'd assume for Katie Taylor it would be they could make an exception in terms of whatever it may be, the insurance or the security that needs to be around boxing these days in Ireland. But I don't know, it is such a shame.
Yeah, it's not necessarily just even her that it's holding back, because there's a number of Irish fighters that are, pros who could, pack out decent-sized venues in this country, and that for that reason aren't able to do it. The situation, is there any tackling this? Is there any way that things could be circumvented? Is there any way that this problem could be ironed out even a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's above the decision-making process of the boxing promoters almost. This is it's a bigger security issue, as Andy alluded to there, and until those kinks are ironed out, it's just not going to be given the green light. And you can see from Sky's point of view why they don't want to pull the trigger on that necessarily. And then, like, America's where the money is. So
yeah. I want to touch on Canelo and Kovalev. I'm going to have to lean on Rowe a little bit more on this one because he would have seen it, not me. But it was a 11th round stoppage for Canelo. He seems to be almost unstoppable, but there's an element of how that's being done that kind of worry people, I guess.
I know. Moving up 2 weight divisions, well, 1 weight division, but from 2 weight divisions from his natural weight division up 15 pounds to fight a champion, like an established champion in Kovalev. Probably not the strongest champion in the division in light heavyweight, but it's so hard because he has that blip, when we call it a blip now. He failed a drug test, for what he said contaminated meat. It's clenbuterol, which is a steroid. But even before then and since then, what he's done in the ring is phenomenal, and there's no one to beat him. There is no one out there. I don't think there's 2 fighters maybe who have the best shout. It's probably Callum Smith from Liverpool and Billy Joe Saunders. But other than that, I can't see anybody getting close to him. And he is pound for pound number 1 now. He has to be.
Yeah, I can never give him that mantle given what he's done. But, like, I don't know, like normally when you see fighters doing this, moving up in weight and taking on like noticeably bigger people, they have to adapt their tactics accordingly. He doesn't really do that necessarily, in the sense that lighter fighters will generally go in and try and box off the back foot. He stood there and it was almost as if he assumed he was going to take Kovalev.
No, but it was with Kovalev, you know, who was aging, and even in the fight didn't look to have the same snap or the same sort of hunger or power that he had as a younger fighter, you know.
Yeah.
And I think he's been smart in picking him, but he would naturally probably walk around at 175, maybe 180 even. So it's not that. It just means that he didn't have to cut as much, you know, in terms of losing weight. So I'm not that surprised with the, you know, being able to perform at 175, because in the gym he'd probably be 175 most days, you know, and sparring at his best. But he's a hell of a fighter.
We'll always have the question mark.
Yeah, he will, and he'll always loom over his head, really.
And like the belts he's won at this point, he's a Hall of Fame candidate, but whether he can actually be put into the Hall of Fame with that asterisk remains to be seen. Like, would you vote for him?
I don't know. I don't even think I'd be asked to vote, so I don't worry about it.
That's a politician's answer I've ever heard.
No, I don't. See, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me, because as a fighter, you admire him so much at what he can do in the ring. You just watch him, and I'm like studying everything he does, the head movements, the slips, the way he punches, the way he counters, the way he presses with his feet. Everything he does is just it's poetry in motion. Yeah. But then when he's him as a his personal attitude, and also having failed the root test, it just would always take the shine off him.
All right, we'll leave it there. Andy Lee and Ronan Mullen, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Cheers.
Back after this.